How will you make it on your own? This is the introductory line of the Mary Tyler Moore Show's theme song, and the first words its viewers hear upon beginning the show. And it begs an important question. When the Mary Tyler Moore Show premiered in 1970, women were not encouraged to make it on their own, and television had never depicted them doing so. Work for women was seen as undesirable, and for centuries the ideal for women had remained the same: to maintain their role in the traditional nuclear family as caretaking wives and mothers. However, with the rise of the second wave of the women's rights movement in the 1960s and 70s, many women began to break away from the societal norm and demanded new social and legislative rights to match their quickly growing desire for responsibilities outside of the nuclear family. Between 1970 and 1977, the Mary Tyler Moore Show furthered the ideas of the second wave of the women's rights movement. The show's protagonist, Mary Richards, was a radically independent character who brought feminist ideas to a large audience. Her pursuit of working responsibilities promoted a new and appealing image of the working woman and demonstrated that women could be successful and satisfied in choosing responsibilities outside of the home. Since the Industrial Revolution's demand for factory workers, many women have held jobs outside of the home. By the 1930s, women primarily worked as teachers, typists, and housekeepers. The majority of women, however, did not hold jobs at all. Only approximately 25% of women in the United States were employed, and about 29% of these working women were married. In stark contrast to this, about 76% of men were employed. This imbalance reflected the widespread opposition to women pursuing responsibilities outside of the home. Many associated the working woman with financial insecurity, and the white middle-class ideal for women remained a life of domesticity. This ideal was represented in the concept of the nuclear family, a family typically composed of a working father, a housewife mother, and their children. During World War II, this family structure was temporarily suspended when millions of men went into service. Many women, in response to the labor shortage the men's absence created, took on new and traditionally male jobs. But once the war ended and the men returned home, most working women were replaced by men, and the nuclear family was reinstated and vigorously encouraged. Television programs in the 1950s and 60s reflected this return to the traditional family structure. Shows such as The Donna Reed Show and Father Knows Best centered around the nuclear family and reinforced the idea that the most acceptable role for women was that of the homemaking wife and mother. However, while many television programs from that time are seen as dated today, a few from that era broke away from conventionality. That Girl centered around an aspiring actress who moved to New York in pursuit of an acting career. And while The Dick Van Dyke Show, in which Mary Tyler Moore herself played a starring role, centered around our traditional family and featured the notorious supper beds for couples of 1950s and 60s sitcoms, Moore herself broke ground by advocating for a character of Laura Petrie to regularly wear pants. Moore's pants came with the strict conditions from the show's network that she could only wear them in one scene per episode and that they could not cup under, meaning they could not be form-fitting.
It's just so weird to think that there was all that you can't cup under and you're in twin beds and
right. And you especially can't cup under when you're in the twin beds.
The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan was published in 1963, a pivotal book that launched the second wave of the women's rights movement. The goals of the movement were similar to the ideas of the book. Both challenged the dominance of the nuclear family and called for new rights to guarantee gender equality in all aspects of life, including the workplace. While the feminist movement gained traction, Mary Tyler Moore was finishing her role as Laura Petrie on The Dick Van Dyke Show, Moore's big break that earned her 2 Emmy Awards, as well as fame and recognition as a talented comedic actress. In 1969, after a reunion special of The Dick Van Dyke Show, CBS offered Mary Tyler Moore a series of her own. Moore, however, did not want to play another Laura Petrie. She and her then-husband Grant Tinker co-founded Mary Tyler Moore Enterprises, a production company, which made a counter-proposal to the network asking for full creative control of the show. CBS accepted their proposal, and Moore and Tinker handed over the show to writers Alan Burns and James L. Brooke, with the instructions to create a show that appealed and related to a modern audience. From this came The Mary Tyler Moore Show, the beloved and unconventional classic that ran from 1970 to 1977, coinciding with and furthering the ideas of the second wave of the women's rights movement.
We were very lucky in our timing in feminism coming to a crucial point for itself just the time we did the show.
The Mary Tyler Moore Show centers around Mary Richards, a 30-something woman who broke up with her long-term boyfriend and moved to Minneapolis on her own. The show focused on her career as an associate producer at WJM, a small news station, and her relationships with her co-workers and friends. The show's choice to portray Mary Richards Richards as both unmarried and pursuing working responsibilities were highly unconventional. While second-wave feminism empowered many women to pursue careers in the place of traditional roles in the nuclear family, to less progressive members of society, being a woman with a job was still unappealing and an indication of a low financial status that would ideally be resolved with marriage and participation in the traditional nuclear family. Mary Richards, however, was not burdened by her career, waiting for a man to sweep her off to a life of domesticity. Mary enjoyed her job, and while she had no apparent opposition to marriage, was at no point seeking a husband. And Mary Richards was depicted glamorously, portrayed by the conventionally beautiful Mary Tyler Moore, and always dressed in the latest fashion trends, refuting the undesirable image attributed to working women. Making Mary Richards a single working woman was not just an embracement of non-traditional responsibilities, but a subtle rejection of the idea that domestic responsibilities were the only ones a woman should pursue. The Mary Tyler Moore Show was groundbreaking in its support of the ideas of the second wave of the women's rights movement.
We don't see her on the show, at a march, at a protest, at a sit-in, and so it can be easy to think of things that were happening related to civil rights, women's rights, and not connect the Mary Tyler Moore Show explicitly, but I kind of think that that's the genius of the show.
The show featured many topics central to the feminist movement, such as equal pay for women, a main theme of its season 3 premiere episode, in which Mary Richards advocates to give equal pay to her male predecessor.
The only reason he was paid more than I am is because he was a man.
Richards is portrayed as a single woman who goes on dates and is in casual relationships, even showing her the morning after a date wearing the same outfit she had worn the evening before, implying they had engaged in sexual relations and promoting the feminist idea that women could be in casual sexual relationships. The show even featured a brief joke about the pill, a crucial tool for women's reproductive rights, marking one of the first times birth control is mentioned on television. But the Mary Tyler Moore Show wasn't just groundbreaking for women on screen. The show actively sought out female writers for their unique voices and perspectives on a show centered around a woman. In 1973, a third of the show's writers were female. About her time as a screenwriter on the show, Susan Silver recalled, "I pitched stories from my own life, things that all women had experienced but were fresh to the men." Another screenwriter for the show, Treva Silverman, would go on to be the first woman to ever receive an executive title on a network sitcom for a position as an executive story consultant on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. While The Mary Tyler Moore Show is often praised for being ahead of its time, it was a challenge to even get the show on the air for that very reason. Mary Richards was initially pitched as a divorcee, an idea that CBS found too controversial and the showrunners were forced to scrap to prevent the show from being canceled. Once the show had premiered, the network continued to disapprove of many of the show's scripts. Grant Tinker and Mary Tyler Moore, however, took the sides of the writers over the network and allowed them to shoot even when CBS told them not to. Conversely, however, many modern feminists believe that the Mary Tyler Moore Show did not go far enough. In her book Primetime Feminism, Bonnie J. Dow calls Mary Richards the classic good wife in a new location, and argues that while the show was set in a workplace, her nurturing and accommodating tendencies towards her coworkers were similar to those of traditional housewives to their families in earlier sitcoms. The Mary Tyler Moore Show depicted its characters, male and female, in all different marital statuses and career choices without positioning one as better than the others. Lou Grant, Mary Richards' grumpy boss, got a divorce. Phyllis, Mary's overbearing neighbor, was a traditional wife and mother. Rhoda, Mary's friend and neighbor, gets married in her own spin-off show Rhoda. And Mary herself, of course, is single and satisfied with her working responsibilities. In representing and uplifting all of these different choices, the Mary Tyler Moore Show demonstrates that women can pursue varying responsibilities, including the working ones of its protagonist, and still be happy and successful. Soon after The Mary Tyler Moore Show, other shows began to feature single and working women, such as One Day at a Time, a show about a single mother raising her teenage daughters in Indianapolis, and Murphy Brown, which further explored the difficulties of being a working woman. Its titular journalist protagonist even hailed by the New York Times as an updated Mary Richards.
Mary Tyler Moore really opened the door.
The second wave of the women's rights movement began to lose momentum by the 80s, but not before obtaining many victories, such as the Equal Pay Act in 1963, which required employers to pay their male and female employees equally. Title IX in 1972, which made gender discrimination illegal in federally funded education programs, and the Supreme Court decision of Roe v. Wade in 1973, which legalized abortion. While the Equal Rights Amendment, one of the main goals of second-wave feminism that would guarantee gender equality under law, failed to be ratified, the women's rights movement of the 1960s and 70s is responsible for many of the opportunities and rights women have today, and Mary Richards would not have been able to be a woman pursuing working responsibilities were it not for the movement's push to open up the working world to women. Today, The Mary Tyler Moore Show is regarded as a figurehead of the second wave of the women's rights movement for its unprecedentedly independent heroine. Mary Richards redefined the working woman as television's first single woman with working responsibilities, but she certainly wasn't the last. Today, female characters on television are more complex and advanced than they have ever been.
Realizing like how groundbreaking it is to have a show that was in the 70s that was doing things that hadn't been done, and how that begins to make possible shows that we have now.
Mary's impact can be seen in the many women making it on their own in television today, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show remains one of the most beloved shows in television history.